What's up, Otakuans? Today we will be beginning one of our newest series called the Manga Corner. Here we will do a light novel slash manga volume reviews of animes that have already received at least one season, showing the similarities but also highlighting the key differences between the two. Of course, the purpose of this is not only to extend our reach to our light novel and our manga readers, but we also want to bridge the gap between those readers as well as all of our anime onlys. We hope that you all enjoy our newest series, and once we post our upcoming titles following this episode, please reach out to us and let us know which one you will be interested in seeing next. Our first series that we're going to be diving into is going to be Goblin Slayer, the light novel. So let's first move on to a quick synopsis. Goblin Slayer is a story about a 20-year-old silver rank adventurer whose only concern is slaying goblins in any way imaginable. Though at first goblin slaying may seem like a menial task, we soon learn that this rookie quest isn't as easy as it appears. Note, when we are going through this review, just know that these characters do not have names. The author intended this purposely. His thought around it was simply that these characters can serve as characters in an RPG, so you'll hear things such as Farm Girl. So you'll hear things such as Guild Girl or Cowgirl. These are how the author describes his character. They don't have actual names. So let's go ahead and jump right into Chapter 1 of Goblin Slayer. Chapter 1, The Fate of Some Adventurers. The first chapter of this book is pretty much a one-to-one match with what we watch from the anime's first episode. The story begins with a young priest who's already injured staring up at her would-be savior, unsure exactly what this creature is exactly, and when she asks who he is, his only response is Goblin Slayer. Then we quickly rewind to the moment that this young priest joins the adventuring guild. She's a 15-year-old orphan that was raised in the temple, and how things go in this world, orphans that are raised in the temple, once they turn 15 years old, they have two paths. Either continue working at the temple, of course, giving all their time and energy serving, or they can choose to move on to become an adventurer, acting as a priestess, of course, using those spells. Though she was a little apprehensive at first, maybe scared what was in store for her and her adventures, she was soon put at ease when a small adventuring party invites her to join an urgent request. They've been tasked with one of the easiest quests, goblin subjugation. After a little persuading, she was soon in tow with her newfound party on her first quest. But from what we saw in the anime, it doesn't end well. They soon learn their final lesson. Though the goblins are the weakest creature, they are not to be trifled with. The following events pretty much follow the events from the anime. The group is ambushed from behind due to small tunnels that the goblins dug. The wizard is the first to go down. Next, the young male swordsman, who initially invited her to the party. And then following the female warrior, who apparently grew up in the same village as the young swordsman. When the female warrior actually is taken down, she does say basically bide some time so that the priestess can escape with the wizard. Apparently the wizard had got stabbed in the abdomen. She was bleeding out. The priestess, of course, she performed one of her magic spells to heal the wizard, but we soon find out that it doesn't quite help. She continues to bleed out even though she is starting to heal. So with this extra time, priestess drugged the wizard's body deeper into the caves, hoping that she could have more time to finish healing her. But in the end, Goblin Slayer ends up appearing and saves the priestess. But unfortunately, the wizard was stabbed initially, so he explains to her that, hey, yeah, you may be able to heal the wound, but the poison has already taken root. So in the end, he had to help end her suffering. Goblin Slayer then proceeds to slay all the goblins in the nest and save the kidnapped girls. The only difference here is we talk about multiple girls being found alongside Warrior, so they're saved while the anime only focuses on Warrior. Yeah, it mentions when they're first going out that there are multiple girls, but in the anime we only see the image of Warrior when they do end up saving her. Also, though the ARPing is spoken about in a roundabout way in the light novel, it isn't specifically said. Unlike in the anime, there are multiple scenes that definitely show what is about to occur. So the light novel kind of steers away from that, while the anime definitely shows the viewer like this is what's about to happen. Next chapter, Interlude with the Gods. This interlude is something that isn't immediately shown until episode 3, and even then it's only kind of touched on by the narrator. It's an interaction between the gods, illusion and truth, while they're playing a game of dice representing chance. It seems that they have some sort of bet going on, but whatever it is regarding the adventurers and whether they succeed and win or they die and the game must start over. Illusion seems to be in favor of the adventurers while Illusion is against them. This quickly ends when they acknowledge that a new adventurer has joined the playing field. He has come is the sentence or the statement that is said at the end of this interlude. In the anime, a scene of a dice being rolled and the mention of gods rolling dice, like chance in the world, is the only thing that is mentioned during that episode. Chapter 2, Cowgirl's Day. This chapter actually follows the events from the anime where we start to get the backstory of Cowgirl and the Goblin Slayer from a dream that she has in the beginning. The following morning, we continue to follow her as she starts her day, converses with both Goblin Slayer and her uncle. We learn he pays rent in order to stay on their farm, though the uncle doesn't seem to like him too much. We also see a glimpse of how Goblin Slayer is when he's not adventuring. Essentially, he's still the same. Every morning he does still wake up. He performs his daily tasks, checking to make sure he doesn't see any goblin footprints, no type of early warning devices that have been set up. He does this every day. The story then moves on to Goblin Slayer and Cowgirl going to town. Goblin Slayer accompany until they reach the guild to find spearmen flirting with an uninterested guild girl. The anime follows the light novel where Goblin Slayer waits until the new quests are posted. We then find out time has passed since Goblin Slayer has saved the princess and since they have been adventuring together. Cowgirl watches their interaction while in the anime she comments that he had mentioned he saved someone not knowing it was a girl. In the light novel she knew that it was a girl, but she wishes the girl wasn't so young. She clearly shows that she is jealous of his new party member. When Goblin Slayer asks the guild girl about any goblin quest, the anime shows a scene of Cowgirl washing her body sadly, but this isn't shown at this time in the light novel. They discuss another young party that went out, and even though Princess wants to go help them, she soon resigns and decides to join Goblin Slayer in his bigger goblin quest. Simply the reason behind this was Princess, yeah, she has been adventuring with Goblin Slayer, maybe 3 or 4 missions since he saved her. She's learning, but she knows by herself she's not going to be much help to that young adventuring party. By the end of the chapter, we finish off when Cowgirl returns home and stays up all night thinking about the past, where we learn more about the event that killed her parents 10 years ago. During this event, their village was attacked by goblins when she was out of town. All she remembers is, yes, she did have parents. She remembers burying them, but past that, she doesn't have much memories of them. She wonders what would have been different if she had asked him to come with her. Her uncle then appears telling her she should go to bed and not to stay up worrying about him. He admits that yes, he may be proficient and he does pay him well just to live there. He believes that she should do her best to stay away from him. Nonetheless, worried, Farm Girl says she would stay up a bit longer. He didn't return until the next day, and those young adventurers that were mentioned by Guild Girl never returned home. While the anime, it does make it seem, I wouldn't even say makes it seem, it shows a scene of young adventurers showing up to the guild, apparently after a mission. While in the manga, the light novel, they explicitly say that those adventurers never returned home. Chapter 3, Guild Girl's Reflections. This chapter actually is initially shown in anime episode 2, where we see a scene where a farmer comes to the guild to request adventurers to come slay the goblins. They first go into a conversation about the happenings at the farm, rumors of what goblins are capable of, and then they end up at payment. Once the farmer, of course, drops how much they're willing to pay for adventurers to come to complete this mission, Guild Girl notices that it's not a lot of coins, and then she goes into another internal monologue about how yes, these farmers are coming and saying, "Hey, we need these goblins to be exterminated," and they are in danger. She knows that many adventurers, especially more experienced adventurers, will never take these quests because simply they're not going to be enough money. The problem with that is newer adventurers with little money looking to go on their first quest often accept these quests thinking it will be easy money. She knows with every quest the likelihood of these young adventurers returning home unharmed is very unlikely. She battles internally for a moment of whether it's better to send 3 parties of adventurers to their death or sacrifice 3 villages. Soon, we see Spearman walk in to again distract the old girl from her thoughts with more flirting and tales of his adventures. We see that she is again completely uninterested and instead waiting expectantly for someone else to walk in. Soon, that person appears. Goblin Slayer walks in and she noticeably becomes happier. We start to see even Guild Girl may have a thing for Goblin Slayer. That or she appreciates the fact that she can always count on him to take the goblin quest that the more experienced adventurers would never, and way too dangerous for the non-experienced. We also learn that she oftentimes offers a special tea only to Goblin Slayer that he never refuses. This of course makes her happy. We also learn here that Priestess is away at a temple, and Goblin Slayer had recently come back from a solo quest. Though somewhat concerned, Guild Girl knows she doesn't need to worry about him. From here, Goblin Slayer and Guild Girl carry on with some idle chat, but we start to see how much Guild Girl truly cares about Goblin Slayer, even going as far as playfully reprimanding him for the dark statements he makes about his relationship to the goblins. Something we also receive in this chapter is the monologue that we hear from episode 2 that begins with imagine that one day your home is suddenly attacked by monsters. Guild Girl wonders if he's talking about everyone in general, or is he speaking from personal experience? Chapter 4. The Mountain Fortress Burns. This chapter starts from the perception of an elf ranger who has currently been defeated and is lying naked next to 3 other women from her party. We find out that this elf and her party went to check out a mountain fortress due to a missing village girl. This mountain fortress at one point used to belong to the elves, but since now has been taken over by goblins. The party, full of 8th ranked steel adventurers, still fell to those goblins. The ranger, though skilled in trap detection after hours of elaborate, sensitive, and deadly trap detection, simply missed one. From here, after a good while of fighting, they all eventually fell. Next, we see the perception of a lone goblin who is upset he missed out on all the fun. He soon spots Goblin Slayer and Priestess walking towards him. He quickly alerts his companions, but soon they all are met by the end of a flaming arrow. Goblin Slayer and Priestess then proceed to light additional arrows and fire them upon the wooden mountain fortress. We also learned that while Priestess was away at Temple, she learned 2 new spells, of which one she uses to create a protection wall at the opening of the fortress to assist Goblin Slayer in burning it all down. We watch Goblin Slayer, as he always does, pick off each goblin one by one, counting as he goes. This scene was actually the scene that we watched during episode 2 while he gives his goblin monologue speech, and then continuing with Cowgirl's conversation with her uncle. The final scene from this chapter covers the after credit scene, also from episode 2, where we see a small street show talking about Goblin Slayer's Mountain Fortress adventure. After the show, when the crowd disperses, one remains. She asks the bard if Goblin Slayer from his story actually exists. He confirms, and we soon find out that the hooded character is an elf that next utters a single word, Orkboat. In the anime, we can see the elf is also accompanied by a dwarf and a lizard man. The novel only speaks about the elf. Interlude, Guild Girl. Our next chapter today returns back to the perspective of Guild Girl. In this scene, she's being asked by an interviewer to basically talk about the Adventure Guild and its history. We learned that, like many other adventure guilds, it started out as a tavern where adventurers would simply come to meet. The King of Time actually established the guilds to support those heroes. It's essentially a business that ranks adventurers by their accolades and properly identifies appropriate quests. She then talks about the adventure rank structure from ranks 1 to 10, with rank 1 being Platinum, which is the highest and the most rare of all the ranks, and 10 being Porcelain, where of course we know the priestess that we have met already is of porcelain rank. This interview was then cut short by the entrance of Goblin Slayer. Chapter 5, Unexpected Visitors. This chapter begins the same way episode 3 of the anime does. We have now moved to the perspective of the elf that we met last chapter or at the end of episode 2. She is now in the lobby of the Adventuring Guild asking for someone called Orkbo. Of course, this confuses Guild Girl and she wonders if she is looking for a specific monster quest or even an oak tree. She then realizes she's looking for a specific person once a dwarf shaman accompanying the elf joins in the conversation. You can immediately see that these two have some sort of internal rivalry from how they communicate with each other, calling each other different names such as Long Ears or even Shorty towards the dwarf. They both can't seem to figure out the right word to describe who or what they are looking for. A lizard man soon joins the conversation as the voice of reason to reprimand the two and assist. All three of these new characters are shown to be silver tagged. Guild Girl notes that though it is not uncommon for high elves, dwarf shamans, or even lizard men to become adventurers, this combination in one party is weird. He then tells the Guild Girl what they are really looking for is Goblin Slayer. Soon, Goblin Slayer walks into the guild and Guild Girl excitedly calls for them to ask about their most recent quests. She then lets them know that he has visitors and that they could use the room upstairs to meet. Like in the anime, Priestess is told to stay downstairs and rest, and while down there, she is confronted by young adventurers like herself. They seem to want to invite her to join their party, but because of past events, Priestess is hesitant. It isn't that she wants to join them, quite the opposite. She just finds it really hard to say no. She is soon saved by a senior adventurer called Witch. Witch has a very seductive mannerisms, but the young adventurers could easily tell that she is not one to be messed with. They soon resign, leaving Priestess and Witch to talk. Witch admits she knows Goblin Slayer somewhat, and they've worked together in the past, so she knows how he is. She leaves her with a word of advice. If you're going to accompany him, let it be your own decision. Priestess is unsure of what she means, for now. We then return to the perspective of Goblin Slayer upstairs. Again, the meeting in the anime was a direct adaptation from the chapter. Immediately, the High Elf questions the capabilities of Goblin Slayer due to his cheap armor and the upkeep. She is soon corrected by the dwarf, pointing out her inexperience not knowing that how Goblin Slayer has set up his load is best for what he does, goblin slaying. Goblin Slayer quickly moves the conversation to the quest. When the mention of demons is brought up, he immediately turns it down. Elf finds this to be distasteful, noting the only thing he cares about is goblins and not the state of the world in the fight against the Demon King. She's met with the hard truth that while there are bigger battles, goblins threaten the lives of everyday people every day. Again, Lizard Man, being the voice of reason, interrupts and lets Goblin Slayer know that this is indeed a goblin quest. The details of the quest remains the same. An exceptionally large goblin nest has appeared in the elf nation, and it is putting everyone in danger. Since it's in the elf nation, politics is preventing any nation from sending an army there to exterminate them. They've decided to create a small adventuring party, and with the help of Goblin Slayer, exterminate the nest and save any survivors. From the details of the Goblin Slayer receives, he becomes a bit unnerved. This is the largest and most dangerous goblin quest he's ever taken. But past that, the threat is too great to be ignored. Goblin Slayer accepts the quest and states he will go at it alone, even without Priestess. When Goblin Slayer attempts to leave the guild unnoticed, Priestess catches up with him and after a few moments of debate, declares that she will be accompanying him. We then find out that the three visitors also decide that they will accompany him in this quest. Thus, the formation of a new party in the most unexpected way. Our last chapter for today is going to be Interlude, the Heavy Warrior. This chapter is from the perspective of Adventure and his party. He is also asked for an interview by an undisclosed person at which he goes into detail about goblin slaying. He begins with how many goblin slaying quests start, with a few goblins attacking a village and then that village coming to request a goblin extermination quest. He then moves on to recounting a goblin slaying quest him and his party went on. He admits that though goblins are supposed to be weak and easy, their party nearly lost their lives. The only thing that saved them was the fact that they prepared, and the best that they could beforehand. The opposite of the first party we are introduced to when nearly everyone died and we met Priestess. He finished his interview saying now him and his party are silver ranked, and though out of 100 Goblin Slaying quests, 99 times you will succeed, but you never know when that 100th time will be. Besides, there's not enough money in Goblin quests, so the newbies should be the ones to go ahead and handle it. Unfortunately, this seems to be the perspective of most senior adventurers. Alright, there you have it. Today we went over the first half of the Goblin Slayer light novel. If you enjoyed the review so far, please be sure to look out for the second half of my Goblin Slayer Volume 1 review. Again, we will post a list of the possible next titles to our Instagram, so if there's anything that you want to see next, let us know. Thanks for joining us for another week of the Otaku Octagon. Peace.